And good morning, everybody. We're live. Congratulations. You made it through the week. Another week of food safety, food quality, amazing products that are feeding all of us and making us happy. And if nobody else says it, Tammie and I are going to say it to you today. Good job. You did a good job. We appreciate what you do because in food safety, a lot of times it goes unnoticed because people just assume it happens. Well, guess what? We notice. So if you're new, welcome. Pull up a chair. I'm Bryan Armentrout with the Food Leadership Group. And every day at this time, we sit down and do a food safety chat. So 8 a.m. Mountain Time, 10 a.m. Eastern on LinkedIn, YouTube, and Twitter. We live stream. And we bring an expert on the show to go over a topic of interest and something that you're going to like. And what you'll notice with this is not a lecture. This is not a fancy presentation. This is meant to be a discussion. And really, that's the fun part of what we do here. And I'm really excited because we have a new guest on here today, and that's Tammie Van Buren with the Safe Quality Foods Institute, otherwise known as SQF out in the marketplace. Tammie, how are you doing today?
I'm doing pretty good. I'm looking forward to the holiday weekend here in the U.S., so very excited to be here.
Awesome. And so as regulars on the show know, as part of our cadence with getting ready for the show is we have a prep call and we'll go over the topic and what's interesting and what do we think is going to be of value to people. And Tammie, when we had our call on Monday, I think we could have talked for 2 hours easily on today's topic.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So before we dive in, and I'm always super guilty of this, is we list out where we're at. Let me know you're here and where you're at in the world. I am in Loveland, Colorado. And today it's going to be another gorgeous day. Looks like we're going to have a high of right around 69, 70 degrees, Tammie. Going to be a beautiful day. Lots of yard work here for the Memorial Day weekend. Where are you at in the world?
So I'm in Hopkinsville, Kentucky. For those that don't know logistically where that is, I'm about an hour northwest of Nashville, heading towards St. Louis. So yeah, I've lived in Kentucky all my life, and it's going to be, I think, another warm one here today. Hopefully we're not going to get any more rain. It's been really rainy the last few weeks. So
yeah, fingers crossed on that for sure. So exactly. One of the things that we love to do on the chat here with everyone before we get started is join us, everyone, in a drink of your favorite beverage. And I love the horse mug. That is so pretty.
Yeah.
Cheers, everyone.
Cheers. Yeah. We do two things really well in Kentucky. That's raise horses and make bourbon, of course. So.
Of course. Yeah, Kentucky's a beautiful state. Christy is joining us. Hi, Christy. Nice to see you.
Hi, Christy.
And Austin, of course, here in the Denver area is regular, and Austin's a super cool dude. So always glad to have Austin here as well. So we got so much to cover here. So let's dive in, Tammie. So first off, thanks for coming on. And one of the things that we always do when we have a new expert on with us is tell us a little bit about you and your journey and what you do.
Yeah, absolutely. So as you said, I am with the Safe Quality Food Institute. I'm going on almost 5 years with them as their compliance manager. And it's been, so far a really fun ride. Leanne and Christy are both joining us this morning from Chicago. And they are two of my favorite ladies to work with at SQFI. And prior to that, I was actually an SQF practitioner in a couple of different SQF certified facilities. But I've only been in the food industry about 12 years. Prior to that, I spent almost 20 years in the automotive industry. And I made that transition to food. And it's been a great journey so far.
Nice. And so what does a compliance manager do?
It's a great question. So we have 34 certification bodies around the world, and those certification bodies, conduct those audits, send in those auditors, and complete those certificates for about 14,000 SQF sites around the world.
Wow.
And so my job as compliance manager, I make sure that, everybody's kind of doing what they're supposed to be doing, following those GFSI requirements, following our requirements, Yeah, auditors too. We've got about 800 SQF professionals between our auditors, our trainers, and our registered consultants. So yeah, just checking in on everybody, making sure that they're basically following our expectations. As a compliance manager, I look at a lot of data. So I am kind of a data nerd. And so I analyze a lot of data. I also look at a lot of audit reports and look at those corrective actions and those root causes. And so that's what makes that, topic one of my near and dear topics that I talk a lot about, because I get to see firsthand where we are at, just broadly, all of our sites. And sometimes our CPs and auditors, they'll tell you sometimes they have to submit corrective action to me too. So, it's a topic that everybody has to do, but I think we just struggle to do it well. And so hopefully we're going to come up with some things today that will help us to solve the problem of doing root cause and problem solving better.
Absolutely. And so that's a good point, because audits are always taking place. There's someone who is checking up on stuff and making sure there's compliance. And behind the scenes, we all know the audits that we see. So auditors going into food plants, making sure that they're following the requirements of the code and doing the audits. Well, there's also audits that take place for certification bodies. For example, there are third parties, jazz hands, for example. You always got to do this when you say it. And they're auditing the people who audit. And those reports then go to the standard owners, such as SQFI, FMI, and that gets rolled up into what goes to GFSI and all these acronyms and everything else. So there's all of these cross checks, which is why the system works. One piece of this isn't operating independently and deciding what the rules are. They're being created by the group and then checked on that side.
And I will tell you, as a certified site, I had no idea that all of that went on behind the scenes. And it wasn't until I started working at SQFI, I was like, oh my gosh, this is much bigger than just being a site, here in Kentucky, where an auditor comes in and does my audit and then gives me a certificate. It is so much bigger than that. And I had no idea until I started with SQF.
Yeah, it's very complicated for sure. But the bottom line is it all comes down to two things. Is you're being audited to a standard, and the thing I always say here on this, Tammie, is the rules of the game. So what is the scope of what you're doing? You have SQF audits, you have customer audits, you have regulatory audits, all these type of things that people ask questions around. And as we're talking about here, this goes both ways. But in the end, if there's something that isn't being done the way it should, then a deviation is created. Say, oh, well, you should be doing this, but you're not doing this, or you don't have the evidence that you did this. You need to correct this. And part of that then is really what we're talking about today, as you mentioned, which is root cause and corrective action. And oh my goodness, this is hard for people. And kind of as we put in for the post we were talking about today, doing these type of activities is not easy, is it?
It's not. It is not. I mean, it sounds easy, figuring out what happened and then correcting it and making sure it doesn't happen again. But gosh, it's one of the hardest things that I find that sites struggle with is doing a proper root cause analysis and implementing those actions to prevent those things from happening again.
Right. And so with that, one of the things we like to do here on the chat is kind of define our terms. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a Webster's dictionary type definition, but what does root cause and corrective action mean to you?
Yeah. So, as you mentioned earlier, it starts with the deviation. So whatever that is, the nonconformance that's identified through evidence. And at SQF, we teach that you gather evidence using the road to Rio, records, interviews, or observations. It doesn't always have to be a piece of paper. You could interview somebody or observe somebody doing something. So it starts with that nonconformance. And then you find the why behind the nonconformance. So why did it occur? And that's root cause analysis, is just finding that why it occurred. We know it occurred. We saw it. We have the evidence, but why did it occur? And that gets you started on the right foot. to corrective action. And we also teach that there are 3 things to consider. So corrections. Correction is the first one. That's when you address what was seen. So I always use the example of an air hose on the floor. We all work in manufacturing. There are hoses that get left on the floor when nobody's using them. And so I see a hose on the floor, I pick it up. That's the correction. I corrected the nonconformance or the deviation. But then when I find out why it happened, why was there a hose on the floor? That's the corrective action, when I put something in place to keep that from happening again. And then we always talk about preventive or preventative, depending on where you are in the world. You use different terms to prevent other similar things from happening. So I corrected that one hose from being on the floor. And then I'm going to look at all the other hoses in the facility to see if I can prevent them from being left on the floor. So it expands out. And so sometimes we confuse those things, or sometimes we stop at that correction and we never do that root cause analysis that leads us to the corrective action. So that's how I would kind of define those terms.
No, that's great. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. I talk a lot, so I was just, giving opportunity.
Well, and I think that's why, Tammie, I think it comes back to why this is so hard, because you have to then steps. Right? So it's very easy to say, "Oh, here's something," right, and jump on it and fix it, and then go, I did my job," and then you walk away. You need to think about this stuff, and this is something that I always taught my quality managers: is your job is to think. It's not to run around in the plant and bark orders at people. And it's to figure out the why behind these things are happening. And I think the hose on the floor is a perfect example. So pest control, you find a rodent in a trap. Right. Corrective action, get rid of the rodent. Better question, why is there a rodent here?
Exactly.
How did it get in? Where did it come from? Did it get through a gap in a door? Find those things out. And then start saying, oh, do we have other traps? Maybe I need to go back and do some more checking. The time of year. Oh, hey, it's the fall. It's starting to get chilly outside. These little critters are going to want to get in my plant. I need to increase my activity to make sure that we're taking care of this, right? That's looking at the future. And that's that, as you mentioned, right, that preventive action piece of it. And the correction is just taking care of the thing when it happens. So yeah, those are great definitions around that. So really, so kind of the first thing around this is people think that we're automatically trained and we intuitively know how to do these type of activities. We're all adults and we have problems all the time and we figure out how to fix them. But that's not really true. I mean, really the first step on this, what do you need to be successful in these programs, Tammie?
Yeah, so training is always a great place to start. And, we released a training bundle a couple of years ago that had 8 different topics in it that would be of interest to a food safety professional. And I will tell you, we had one on root cause analysis, one on corrective and preventive action. And out of those 7 or 8 topics, guess which 2 were the least purchased? So I just get the feeling sometimes that people do think it's so simple that, I don't need training for that. And so then they just kind of wing it on their own and they don't get that training that they need to make them be successful. And it's such a shame because it really is simple to teach it and to understand it. But I think that's where part of that gap is. People are skipping that training step.
Yeah, I mean, because part of the temptation, I think is the best word, is when you have a problem in the plant and something happens, I've seen this before, and then I know how to fix this, and you just do it. And jumping to those conclusions can be a really wrong way to do that. So I see Duncan. Good morning. Duncan's overseas. I always say good morning. Sorry, Duncan. Good afternoon for you, sir. So Duncan's got a good comment here. So this assumes root cause analysis indicate there's something about the hoses that causes them to get left on the floor. Yep, that's what Tammie was saying. But systemically, it's usually more functional. Right. So if that hose on the floor and go ahead, I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, to finish my example of the hose on the floor, that, that actually happened to me. So I was walking through the plant one day, I see an air hose on the floor. I know that every hose in the building is attached to a hose reel, every single one of them. So I thought, somebody just got lazy and left it on the floor. So I picked up the hose and pulled it to retract it, like you do with hose reels. And I went flying almost under the production line.
Oh.
And so I kind of straightened myself up and I look around, hoping no one saw me. And there stands the operator on the other side of the production line. And she's got her hands on her hips. And she says, and now you know the root cause for why the hose was on the floor. It was a safety issue for the operator to put it up. So the operator would only put the hose up once a day. And they'd have to go around and they'd have to pull it through under there and then retract it from that side. So we found the cause. And it wasn't because the operator was lazy or they didn't have time to do it. It was just because to do it the way it was supposed to be done was a safety hazard. And so what did we do? Well, first of all, correction. I put the hose up, almost killing myself in the process. Corrective action was, you know what? We figured out a better place to put that hose reel so that it was not a safety issue and it was closer to the point of use. And then as a preventative action, we looked through the entire building at all of the hose reels and we moved them to the point of use. So, that's a very simplistic example, but it's a very real example. But too often we just jump to the conclusion of, oh, the operator didn't do it, or and then that leads us to the corrective action of being retraining. And I think we're going to talk about retraining later on, because that's one of my pet peeves is when we use retraining as a corrective action. But absolutely, Duncan, I would totally agree that there is a cause for that hose to be on the floor. And typically it has nothing to do with the operator just defiantly didn't want to do it, no, great point. Great question, Duncan.
Yeah, absolutely. And you made an important point in there that I want to make sure that everybody heard. The best way to look at these problems is ask, right? Before you jump in and, I'm going to be the hero and solve this problem, right? No, exactly. Go talk with the person and say, I got a quick question. Why is the hose on the floor? And then you get the answer.
Exactly.
Workers are not stupid, right? They're doing these things for a reason.
Exactly.
And a lot of times, if you're not careful and you don't learn this lesson, you can create what I call a hidden factory. All of these behind the scenes activities that take place between the supervisor and their operators that you don't know about, because the operators know and the supervisor's been there, done that. So something happens and the supervisor says, yeah, do it this way. This is how you need to do it. Well, what about what quality said? Yeah, whatever, what quality, they don't know what's going on, right? So that relationship is critical, absolutely critical.
It is critical. And, I was doing a root cause analysis one time and I went to the supervisor and I said, hey, bring the operator in that made the defective box. And he was like, you want me to go out there and accuse that person? I said, no, I didn't say accuse them. His name was on the box. So just bring him in. I'll talk to him, and we'll figure out the why it occurred. And he's like, why? I can't do that. And I said, well, we can't solve that problem if we don't talk to the people that are actually doing the work. So if you're quality professionals, food safety professionals, and you're sitting in a room and you are the only ones working on root causes, you're not doing it right. So it has to involve a team and it has to have the right people on that team. So even if you add the production supervisor, you probably still don't have a complete team.
No, and that's a good point on the training side of things is, again, as quality food safety professionals, we tend to want to take everything on ourselves. And that's the wrong approach. Just like everything else that you're doing in the production facility with your HACCP plan, your food safety plan, all of your processes and everything else. As the head of food safety or quality, you're the leader of these programs and you're leading the corrective and preventive action programs. And you can't do that in a vacuum. you need to be trained and your team needs to be trained as well, right?
Yeah, exactly. And it doesn't have to be the fancy training. I mean, I mentioned, that we do have, that type of training out there. A lot of people offer that type of training. But as a food safety professional, I like the fact, Bryan, that you mentioned that you get trained and then you share that knowledge and you train your people within the plant. And again, root cause analysis can be trained down to the operator level. It's not some statistical analysis that requires a math degree to be able to understand it. Root cause is something that can be trained and can be explained.
Absolutely. And so as Duncan's talking about here, and he's on fire again this week, that's why I do Kanban walks, is the entire management team is going through the plant and doing checks and making things are going sure the way because there's a couple of rules there is new eyes, right? You have new eyes looking at things. And we talked about this last week as well. One of the, as an experienced auditor, I'm sure you do this as well, Tammie. One of the first things you do when you're in a plant, and this is always a sign that you're working with someone, and this is just automatic habit for me, is when you're getting a tour of the plant, you're doing this.
Exactly.
Right.
You're looking everywhere.
Yeah. And people do this. We become efficient in what we do. And just the fact that I'm there and saying, hey, up there in the ceiling, why is that pipe being held together with some duct tape and string? It's there, but they never see it. And they go, oh, yeah, that's right. Oh, gosh. Yeah, we had a problem like 6 months ago. Forgot about that. Right. And they look at you and they say, wow, that's amazing that you saw that. And it's like, no, I'm just that's just habit. And I'm a new set of eyes in your plant. And by doing those Kanban walks, as Duncan's talking about, same thing, new eyes. You're training those other people to look around.
And I was just going to give a shout out to the plant that I used to work at in Princeton, Kentucky. We did same thing. We called them gimbal walks. And so our entire management team would go out and we just meet and go and talk to everybody on the line. And we would do one line a day. So this line, I would talk to everybody on the line. We would find out what their pain points were. We were looking up, down, under machines, everywhere. And then at the end of the walk, we would identify 3 things that the team would get done by 3:00 that day. And then we would identify 3 things that would get done within the next 30 days. So it's not enough just to do the Kaizen walk. There has to be something that comes out of that, or the Gimbo walk, whatever you want to call them. There has to be some tangible things that come out of that. And so doing the 3x3, 3 things by 3:00 today, picking that low hanging fruit, getting that, temporary repair down out of the ceiling that, may not be even needed anymore. Or, fixing a piece of equipment that, just was a pain point for the operator and nobody really knew about it. And then those 3x30s, helped us long-term to look at those bigger projects. So I like the idea of a Kanban walk.
Yeah, absolutely. Good suggestion, Duncan. And so part of that then too is you can go back and look at past reports as the quality manager in that facility. And if you see the same thing popping up every time, string on roof lines, string on, it's like, what's going on? Why aren't we taking care of that?
And another key part of that is making it a very visible process. So we posted our 3x30s on a whiteboard in the hallway where the employees came in to work, go into the hand wash station. So they could see what was being worked on and they could see the management commitment. Oftentimes we're like, how do you, auditors ask that question, how do I measure management commitment or food safety culture for that matter? And, we made it a very visible process where they could see what we were working on every line in the building, and it touched every single person. And it was very real for them, and they could see the management commitment and the food safety culture.
Yep, I love that. And so Duncan talks about here as well too, is your guys and gals on the floor have a much better understanding of what's going on than you do. And the goal is to find out that information. And the example I use on that side is you can go to a plant manager and say, okay, this piece of machinery in the plant runs at what temperature? Oh yeah, this is at 70 degrees. Oh, okay, great. Go and ask the supervisor. Oh, this runs at 68 degrees. Oh, really? What happened? Oh, yeah, we had some additional cooling capacity, so we changed around some stuff, and now it's running a little cooler. Great. When did that happen? Oh, that was last week. Go talk to the operator. What's this running at? We're down to 66 degrees. Wow. Supervisor thought 68. Well, yeah, that was true a couple days ago, but we did this, and now it's a little cooler, right? You have to go to the source. They have the best information.
Absolutely. Great point.
Yep. And so so a lot of times when we're talking about these activities, you have, an audit, a walkthrough, these type of things, a deviation is noted, and something needs corrective actions. And so for me, I've got a pet peeve on this, and I'm sure you do too. When you're looking at those, what's the worst answer that you can give on a corrective action?
I see things like, mention the retraining as being the corrective action. I hate that one. That's my biggest pet peeve, is stop saying retraining, because when you tell me retraining, then what you're saying to me is I'm going to do the exact same thing over again, and I'm going to expect a different result. And we all know that's the definition of insanity, of course. So if you're going to say you're retraining, then what you're telling me is the root cause is the training was deficient. So what are you going to do differently? And I joke and say, there were times as a food safety manager that, somebody would be trained on something, and the next step, the retraining, was you get to go have a one-on-one with Tammie in her office. So, that was definitely different. But tell me what you're going to do differently. If you're going to retrain, tell me what you're going to do differently. But then we also have that disconnect between the root cause and the corrective action. So we'll say lack of resources, but then the corrective action has nothing to do with getting more resources. So that's my biggest pet peeve, other than the retraining, is that we just lose that disconnect between, the assumptions. I think, so you mentioned assumptions, or Duncan mentioned assumptions. We assume as managers what's going on, and we're not going out and finding the right people to talk to find out the true root cause. And so then we have this disconnect between root cause and corrective actions. So I don't know about Bryan, what's your pet peeve for?
Oh, no, I agree. It's that for me is a huge warning sign. So let's say I'm the one issuing a corrective action to a supplier. So they send some material to my plant, and it arrives at the plant damaged, or there's a wrong count. And I say, hey guys, you figure out what happened on your end. Here's a supplier corrective action, figure it out. And they come back to me, let's say 2 days later. So I know, number one, they didn't do any work if they answered that quickly. And if it comes back retrain, I know they did absolutely nothing. And now my radar has gone up. And it's like, oh, we got a problem with this supplier. Now I'm sending somebody from my team to go visit them, because clearly they're not doing their job. And I need to figure out if this is a risk to my business.
Exactly. And, I tell auditors all the time that within the SQF code, I think it's something like 16 times that root cause analysis is mentioned, or problem solving, corrective and preventive action is mentioned within the SQF code. So that's 16 times you get to test their corrective action process to see if they're just, doing that flyby. Oh, it took me, a day and I've got the response back. And, in SQF, even, in the way we manage recalls, sites are required to notify us if they have a recall within 24 hours. Yeah. Well, we send them a corrective action form to fill out because we want to know what they're doing. And, we need the confidence that they're not going to have another recall. And so we send them that form. And there are a lot of times we'll get that corrective action form back within 24 hours. And I'm like, stop. I want you to take 30 days, because we say, within 30 days. Because to us, 30 days gives them time to work through the recall. It gives them time to do the root cause, their corrective action. If they're taking longer than 30 days, I'm really going to question, their commitment to it. But within 30 days, you've handled the recall, you've done your root cause, you've done your corrective action, and then you have time to sit down and fill out the form and send it back to me. Stop sending me that form within 24 hours because I know you didn't do anything, or you didn't do it properly.
Exactly. And if you have, using that recall example, and God forbid, and that's our main objective here, is to prevent recalls.
Not have recalls.
But if you have one that happens, one of the most important aspects of that from a manufacturing standpoint is after the recall, and figuring out, okay, finance guys, how much did this cost us as a company to go through all of this horrible situation? Exactly. And hopefully, it was something that we caught and nobody got sick or worse. Right? That's a nightmare scenario. You never want that. But then the other piece of it is going back and doing a debrief and saying, okay, with our processes, what went well? Were we able to get a hold of everybody we need to talk to? Did everybody understand the process? Were we able to reach our food lawyer to make sure that we were doing things properly? How did we respond to FDA? Did we do a good job responding to the consumers to let them know what was going on? You need to go back and deconstruct all of that and say, okay, what did we do well? It's the stoplight thing: red, yellow, green. What went well? Okay, good. Let's keep doing that. Yellow, we were kind of okay. And red, oh, geez, we really dropped the ball on this one. We should have had press releases ready to go and we didn't. Okay, well, next time we're going to take this, what we've learned, and we're going to apply this to the future. That's what you want to get to.
Bryan, I'm going to need you to come to, our next conference and explain how to do a test of a recall system, because I go through that with sites, with auditors, and I always ask the question, can an actual recall be a test of their recall system? And I get some people that go, oh, no. And I'm like, oh, yes, it is. That's the best test of your recall system. But they need to do exactly what you said, Bryan, and go back and deconstruct it. What worked, what didn't work, where do we need improvements, where do we need corrective actions? There's another opportunity for corrective actions to come into play. So I like the way you described that.
Too many people think that traceability is crisis management. No. One forward and one back. Tracing your product, tracing your ingredients is a tool you use in that process. This is something that needs to be understood and executed company-wide. Don't be that quality person who holds everything like this. No, that's the absolute wrong way to do things. It needs to be a team approach. And if you haven't noticed, we're kind of emphasizing that, right? Putting together the team, making sure the team is trained, making sure the team is involved in the entire process and that they're helping to write the solutions. It's not you as the quality food safety guy sitting in your office and dreaming this stuff all up. No.
Exactly. Hey, Alex, we have Alex with us today, and and he's got a couple of points that he's made. So I'll let you all take a look at Alex's comment there. That short time frame, that kills me when I look at a site's corrective action process and they say, oh, we're going to do this in the first 24 hours. Well, yes, there are some things to do within the first 24 hours. You need to make sure that you are mitigating the risk that bad product is getting out or that something unsafe is being shipped. So there are some things you need to do immediately. But that full-on root cause, corrective action, preventative action, all of that can't be done in 24 hours typically, unless you literally work around the clock to do that. And, that's just not feasible. So, take your time, do the process right, and you'll be much more successful for sure.
Yeah, definitely. So there are very few examples where you have a corrective action that is just something simple and you close it out. So let's say that you have the auditor notices as he's going through your plant, oh, there's a glass window in a back warehouse that's got a crack in it. Okay, well, yeah, you can replace that really quickly. The smart quality manager says, okay, well, why is that glass broken? And to your point earlier, Tammie, do we have any other broken windows that we maybe need to take a look at? The other thing is, why was the window broken? Maybe it was broken because in that area, birds fly into it. Okay, well, why are birds in that area on the outside of the building? What can we do about that? And trying to figure these things out. Why did that window get cracked in the first place? And even the simplest of things, you think that, oh, there's no need to expand upon this. I'll just get this fixed and send it into the auditor, and all is good. Meh, kind of
Yeah.
mediocre activity there.
Well, it's funny that you mentioned birds, because one of the angriest groups of people I've ever encountered was because I had a tree cut down.
Mhm.
We had birds, a bird problem in our warehouse, and right outside the warehouse man door, there was a tree, and the birds liked the tree. Birds like trees; they like to sit in trees, and so the tree had to go.
Yep.
And so people were angry. You took our tree, because that's where the people like to sit and have break, and we'll build you a structure to keep you out of the sun, but it doesn't have to be a tree that the birds love to sit and roost in. So yeah, so just find the corrective action, find the why. Why are the birds there? It was because we were giving them a nice, lovely home to live in right outside the main door. So the tree had to go.
Yep, absolutely. So yeah, so fantastic. And so one of the things that I love about, and I don't say audience, or we have our participants who are involved in our chat here as well. So Duncan's making some of the good points here. So not everything can be fixed immediately, and as long as you can show the auditor, well, yes, we have this big issue, and we have this plan. It's going to take us about 6 months. We have to get approval for some capital we need to spend. Here's a copy of the PO for the equipment that we're ordering, and you show this information to the auditor. They always going to go, okay, good, that's good. Let me know when that's completed. Or that could be something, depending on what it is, that the auditor will follow back upon during that next audit.
Yeah, and we have a method for doing that, and a lot of sites don't realize that. So corrective actions per the code have to be closed out within 30 days. However, like you mentioned, there are things that can't be. I need a new floor, so that's a capital project, and we all know how long it takes to get capital projects approved. So it's going to take more than 30 days to get the work done, the quotes, everything. So you can get certified with extensions to your corrective actions, but those extensions have to be approved. However, it doesn't take 30 days to update a procedure. It doesn't take 30 days to train people in a new procedure. So things like that need to be closed out in those 30 days. So I guess my point is common sense. It takes a little common sense to figure out, how to close those out and what amount of time that you need to close them out in. But there is a means to get certified with extensions to your corrective actions. Absolutely.
Yeah, exactly. So as a certification body looking over an audit and using that broken, cracked window example, if the response comes back on the corrective action of, oh yeah, well, we need to have a capital approval to get this window replaced, and it's going to take us 3 months. No, you're not.
Stop it.
Yes, you're not trying to fool me and say that you need a capital for a freaking window. Come on, take it out of petty cash and get the window fixed.
Exactly.
Yep. And so Alex is mirroring back what we're saying here as well, is the criticality of the event. It's a cracked window versus you went through a recall, completely different, and you're going to have a very different level of activity associated with that. So that's a good point, Alex. Thank you.
Risk level is, something that's also all throughout requirements. What is the risk to that broken window? You mentioned, is it in the back of a warehouse that, doesn't really get used that often? Or is it directly over, product that's being stored? So
versus a plexiglass shield on a machine that's in direct food contact area.
Exactly.
High priority. You need to get that fixed. That should be fixed before the end of the audit.
Exactly.
Yeah. And so with that too, I mean, so this is, I think too, Tammie, where a lot of quality managers and things get frustrated, because they have this false belief that every deviation needs a corrective action, and they drive themselves nuts, right?
Right. Exactly. I guess my thing is that a lot of people assume it doesn't need a corrective action. And you're not going to know it doesn't need a corrective action until you've really looked at it and analyzed it. So, one of the things that we talk about all the time is somebody not wearing a hairnet correctly. And I've had people say, oh, that's not a valid nonconformance. That's nitpicking. But is it? So is it truly a random occurrence of somebody not wearing their hairnet correctly because they were in a hurry? As a quality manager, I ran out on the production floor one time, forgot my hairnet because I was in a hurry. I was trying to beat the UPS guy here. I wash my hands, I throw on my hard hat, and I step out into the production floor, and I have like 3 people screaming at me, Tammie.
I've done that. I have done that.
You've done that. I've done that. So did that need a corrective action? Did I need to be, remanded, have my hands slapped? So that was an instance where I was truly in a hurry and I wasn't paying attention. I always wore my hairnet. I always wore it correctly. But at the same time, was there something I could do? Yeah. Our hairnets, where were they? They were at the employee entrance. They weren't at the office entrance into the production area. So the hand wash stations were here, and both the office entrance and the employee entrance and the break room entrance came to the hand wash station. But the hairnets were in the hallway where the employees entered each day.
Mm-hmm. That's
if
good thinking.
Had hairnets right beside of the hand wash station, I might have been more likely to look over and go, oh, I forgot my hairnet.
Right.
So even though it was a random, not long drawn out, is there something we could do to make sure it doesn't happen again? But you're not going to know that till you actually evaluate it. What was the reason why I was in a hurry,
Yeah.
So, and that's
a really important point there, Tammie, because I want to make sure everybody caught up in that. So a simple little oopsie, but you took it to the next step and said, well, why did this happen to me? Oh, I didn't have a visual trigger because if I had looked at that box because these are habits in a plant, right? You automatically put on the hairnet, but it wasn't there to remind you. So you're like, oh, if I've done this, I bet other managers have done this too. We need to install a hairnet dispenser at this location. Fantastic example.
Yeah. And it didn't take me a full-blown fishbone diagram, 5Y to figure it out. It took the person who was the offender, in that case, it was me, figuring out that, if I had had something there to remind me, I might not have done that. And so it wasn't a full-blown, drawn-out root cause analysis with corrective action, preventative action, but it was still a corrective action process that I was going through in my head. So, it doesn't have to be long and drawn out, but it's something you can do.
To Alex's point, depends on the criticality. So part of this for me, a good example for this is, and this is what good auditors are always looking for, is trends. So for example, consumer complaints. If you're a larger company, you are awash in consumer complaints, which is fantastic because you're getting direct feedback from the people that are using your product. Well, the challenge now as a quality person is trying to root through that. The first kind of branch in evaluating your complaints is food safety. So the rule I always had in all the procedures I put together was if there's a food safety issue, it comes to me. I need to know about that now. I don't want to wait for a report. I don't want it being buried in an Excel file. I want the information now because if I have a problem, I need to know immediately. Exactly. Okay. Well, the other group are complaints. And a lot of times consumers are not very good at telling you what's going on. Hey, I bought this coffee from you and it tastes like crap.
Yeah.
Okay. Not much I can do with that. What you're looking for are trends. It's like, okay. And so past companies I work at, we had what was called a quality alerts. And if we had our complaints in categories, so microbiological, chemical, physical, different type of complaints. You don't want too many categories. Don't make that mistake. But if we had 3 complaints for the same category from the same plant for the same line, now I knew, we've got something going on here.
Exactly.
Regional quality guy, get out there with the plant and start taking a look at this. There's a reason, Tammie, why when you have an SQF audit or an FDA audit, a lot of times they'll just hang out.
Yep.
And they'll sit by the hand wash station off in the distance and watch.
Exactly.
Because they're looking for trends. Okay, fine. One person didn't do a very good job of washing their hands during shift change. Now all of a sudden we see 5 people go through who didn't do a good job. And here's one person who didn't wash their hands at all. Okay, I've got a trend. And then this all kind of bubbles up to what we talk about all the time now, culture, right? That's what
Exactly.
they're trying to do. And culture is this aggregation of evidence that you're not doing what you think you're doing. You're not walking the talk. And
Exactly.
that's what good auditors are looking for.
Exactly. Yeah. We talk to auditors all the time about, making sure that you're there for the expected duration of the audit. So if it calls for a 16-hour audit, you need to be there at least 16 hours. And, a lot of the feedback I get is, oh, I'm done in 14. Really? Take that other 2 hours and go watch. Just find a corner and just watch. And,
Yeah.
hand wash station is a great example. I used to, we had cameras. I was fortunate to work in a facility where we had cameras. And so I would watch the camera at the hand wash station. And then I would set it up as kind of a competition. People like competition. So I would go, first shift had 99% compliance to hand washing. They washed the right number of seconds. They dried their hands. They threw their trash away like they were supposed to. So then second shift, you were at 96%, So third shift, you were at 92%. And I saw a supervisor who didn't wash his hands correctly. So I took double points for him.
There you go.
But setting up that, again, showing that management is committed to a good food safety culture. Mm-hmm. But it was something fun, because after that, I'd have people come up to me and go, how are we doing? Are we better? So it was a matter of just creating that fun atmosphere, because we can have fun at work, we can, but it was creating that fun, and people remembered that. So then people would walk up to the hand wash station going, you know what? I need to make sure I'm doing because we get complacent when things like hand wash, putting on hairnets, we get complacent. Yeah, we do a drive-by at the hand wash station, a little bit of soap, a little bit of water, and we dry and we go. But the fact that they were like, oh, Tammie might be watching, I got to make sure that, I'm doing my full 20 seconds. I'm singing happy birthday, as I'm doing it, just creates that fun atmosphere that can lead to a better culture. And so lots of examples like that.
Yep. What is measured is managed. And
exactly, for sure.
So with that, we wanted to pull together a few of our favorite tools, because just like everything else, all right, so you've been trained. We have tools for doing root cause analysis and methodologies that are out there to help you go through this process. So I listed out a few of my favorite ones. So first on that list is, of course, the fishbone, right? What is that?
Okay, so the Ishikawa diagram, the fishbone, the 5M and an E, it was a 4M when I started. That tells you how old I am. So the first time and I think you have a picture of it, right? I don't know if you want to pop that up on the screen, that fishbone diagram. But so when I learned fishbone, it was the 4M: man, machine, method, and material. And then somewhere along the way, somebody decided we should add measure, and that we should add environment or mother nature. So sometimes we call it a 6M. I was doing some training the other day I do a little bit of training on my own time for our community college, and I was training root cause analysis, and I found out there's now an 8M. People have added a couple more M's, and I was like, okay, well, it started as a 4M years ago, but now we got an 8M, so awesome. So identifying the problem and then looking at each of those categories to see how they can contribute to the problem, and it gives you a little bit of organization to your root cause analysis, but it also causes you to think about things that maybe you would have had, as you said earlier, had your blinders on. And I would have been so focused on the man or the people in this case that I'm thinking the man did it. It was all their fault. That's the problem. And we don't consider some of those other categories. So fishbone diagram is great. First problem solving tool I ever saw, I was ever introduced to, and it's still a oldie but goodie. But there's others, and that's another thing that I hate to see in people's problem solving process, is that they limit themselves. So how many times, Brian, have you seen a supplier that says, oh, within my corrective action process, I will always do a 5Y, or I will always do a fishbone diagram? Well, a fishbone is not great for every problem, just like a 5Y is not great for every problem. So you got to fit the problem to the tools. Pareto chart, you've got that up there as well. Sometimes it's as simple as doing a Pareto chart to identify some of those trends. I came out of the cracker business. And so, one of the common, complaints from a consumer is too salty, not enough salt. So how do you, within the same lot number, so you have to trend and you have to look at those categories. So I like that you said, don't get too specific, because on that, it wasn't about too much salt or too less salt. It was about the variation in the salt that we were putting on the crackers. So that was our problem. Not that we were putting too much or too little, but that our process was not consistent. And so we had to back it up, and stop looking at that minutia and take a step back and look, at the process of salt application itself. So,
you hit a hot button for me. So one of the things that I always teach is consumers complain when something is different. It could be better.
Exactly.
It could be worse. Who cares?
Exactly.
They have an expectation that you need to meet, and you need to understand that. And the Pareto chart is a great way of helping you figure out what to work on, because there's a lot of noise.
Exactly.
So what's the biggest problem that the consumers are telling us about? And to your point, Tammie, that's a golden example, is, hey guys, we're doing a bad job with salt distribution. Let's put together a project and let's go out and actually look at salt on crackers and figure out what's our variation on this and how do we fix that?
Exactly. I will tell you, so I have a couple of dogs, and I would always buy them the same dog treats. And so I had bought them the same dog treats for years. And then I opened a package one day, and they were kind of in crumbles. And, they were biscuits, square biscuits. And so I opened them, and they're really crumbly. So I called the hotline, not to complain, but to just let them know something was different. So I called the hotline, I got a recording, and I said, hi, Tammie Van Buren, here's my phone number. I bought this product, this type of dog biscuit. Here's the problem. Here's the lot number off the bag. I bought X number of these for years. And I just want to let you know that this lot had something different and it was causing them to be crumbly. The lady calls me back within the hour and says, we've never had a consumer call and give us all the information that we needed in order to investigate a complaint. And I said, yeah, I'm a food safety person. I knew what you needed. And she's like, I just wanted to tell you how great that was. And by the way, we're going to send you another bag of, dog treats. And so, but again, I was a consumer. I was calling because something was different. And I also always tell people, take those consumer complaints seriously, because the consumer that calls is willing to give you another chance. The consumer that never calls to complain, they're just going to walk away. I had a bad experience and I'm going to walk away. Consumers that call are giving you an opportunity to fix your problems. So don't discount those. So
complaints are gold, absolute gold. And so with that, we got to move on here. We're running out of time. So the 5 whys, and so part of the design of the 5 whys is to dig deep, right? Why did this happen? Well, why did that happen? Well, why did that happen, right? And really, really digging down, because you have something that you really need to think about.
Exactly. And just the two that you have on the screen, the 5 whys and the FMEA, I said I came out of the automotive industry. So those are really the two very prominent tools. But in the automotive industry, we do 5 whys 3 ways. 5 why, the first one, why did it occur? And you do 5 whys. Why wasn't it detected? And you do 5 whys. And then what in the system allowed it to happen? And that's where you get into your procedural and your documentation. So I like doing a 5 why 3 ways, just to throw that out there for you.
No, that's gorgeous. Yeah, and we don't have a whole lot of time to go into FEMA here for sure, but very sophisticated tool for risk assessment. What are the different things? How can it failure? How critical is this within that process? End you up with ranking relative to those. So it's a very, very
and
good
it's
tool.
a preventative tool. So you do
Mhm.
that before you implement a new product or process.
Right. And so I'm going to put the link for this. And guys, this was just a quick Google search for me to find this. There's tons of information out there. One I really like a lot is this one, the fault tree analysis. So the motor overheated, right? Well, what could cause the motor to overheat? Well, we're using it too much. Okay. Well, why are we using it too much? And then you continue down. And the other side was, okay, well, the motor's overheating because we're pumping too much current through it. Okay, well, why? Why is that happening? Oh, well, we did something wrong with the calibration, or we have a bad fuse, right? As you can see here in this example. Figuring those things out is super, super important. And getting to those, these processes have been around for decades. And right, there is tons of information out there on this. So you're not on your own for these type of things.
No.
And that training piece that we were talking about is so critical. And one of the things I saw earlier on these slides, which always cracks me up, is cause, correlation, cause and effect. All right, we had this effect. What was the cause? And there's always a really important phrase out there that I think people forget. Right, it's correlation does not equal causation. What do you mean by that? You see these things with these false comparisons on Twitter or things all the time. Did you know that if your fingers are shaped this way, this means you have a higher risk of heart attack? No, it doesn't. It's just that those two things correlate. I saw a funny cartoon on this. It said 100% of people who don't understand correlation and causation die.
True, absolutely.
That cartoon, I love that. That's true on so many levels.
Absolutely.
Yeah, as Cortland says here too. Welcome, Cortland. Good comments as usual from Cortland. Add these to your HACCP program to dig deeper. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
Duncan had also mentioned Pareto is about fault identification rather than RCA. Actually, it can be used for both. So you can use your Pareto to identify your problems and organize them, but also, a lot of times with your fishbone diagram, you come up with all these potential causes. So you may need to collect some data to narrow down to the root cause. So that's how you would use a Pareto in root cause analysis for sure.
Yeah, and part of it as well with Pareto, and Duncan makes a good point. I use it to help me figure out what are the priorities. What are the things I should focus on first? So that's a really good point there. So here's the link I'll put in here for this quick little web page that I found. So there you go, guys. So let's kind of bring this back up to the 30,000 foot level, Tammie. What would you like to leave everybody with today? What are your thoughts around this?
So number one, we talked about in the beginning about, it's the requirements. It might be a SQF audit. It might be a FDA audit. Customers, have requirements for you. The first step is understanding the requirements. So read the code. Understand the requirements. And then once you do that, then you can implement it and you can identify where there are discrepancies. And you shouldn't be, expecting the third party. The third party auditor is not there to come in and identify all your problems. The auditor is there on 1 day, 2 days, maybe, and that's your best day of the year. Your best day is the day the auditor's in the building. So as food safety professionals, we need to be doing that root cause all the time, that using the Pareto to identify and, prioritize what those things we need to work on. But root cause is really something you should be doing every day and, making sure you understand how those pieces connect. The requirements versus, the purpose of the auditor versus the purpose of having that corrective and preventative action process. So just understanding how it all fits together for sure.
Yeah, very good summary. So part of this then is, and this is kind of a theme that's coming out through what we're talking here today, is these tools have been around for a long time for a reason, right? They work really, really well. And everything for me, Tammie, fits into Plan, Do, Check, Act. And what I need, it's exactly what you just said, is, okay, what are the rules of the game? I need to be compliant to SQF version 9, food sector category 17, and understanding that. What am I going to do to meet those requirements? how am I going to check that to make sure it's working correctly? And if I've gone off from what I think, what actions am I going to take to either change that based upon my analysis or put it back on track? And thinking in those terms and explaining that is exactly what anyone who's auditing you wants to hear. Oh, so explain to me how you're meeting this requirement. Oh, here's what we do. Here's how we do it. Here's our procedure. Here's evidence that I did it correctly. Oh, and by the way, here's an example of we didn't do it quite right and we got back on track. Music to any auditor's ears.
Exactly.
Great. Well, gosh, time ran out. And Tammie, thank you. It's been a fantastic conversation. And I hope we've given some people some insights here. I think we have.
I hope so. It was great. Thank you for inviting me. I'm so happy to be here. I've been looking forward to it for weeks.
Yeah, I love doing this every week as well. And we do this for everyone in the audience. And we have just an amazing group of people who join us on this chats and share their expertise with everyone. And for that, thank you. Right? That's why we do what we do. Don't hoard your knowledge and your experience. Share it with the other people who work in food safety and quality, because we're all dependent upon each other, because we all eat and we all enjoy these type of foods. And these are amazing. So thanks again. So with that, guys, we're going to close out our chat for this week. But guess what? We're back here next Friday at the same time, 8 a.m. Mountain, 10 a.m. Eastern, on LinkedIn, YouTube, and Twitter. And I'll bring in another amazing expert like Tammie on our show to have a conversation and hopefully bring a little insight. But in the meantime, enjoy your weekend. It's a long weekend. Have some fun. Realize that you're doing a great job and that we recognize that, and we will see you back here next week. So thank you, Tammie, for joining us again. And thanks, everybody. Have a great weekend.